Relationships are the priority. People, not programs, if we're going to be serious about following Jesus. It also means imitation, not just information. Imitation, not just information. Everywhere you go, people are saying, what we need in our church is discipleship. Have you heard somebody say that in the last 18 months? It's the word. What we need is discipleship sorted out. And you're absolutely right. That's what we need, is discipleship. And if we sort discipleship out, a disciple will make disciples, so we've also sorted the mission thing out as well. So we've just got one task to sort out, and we've got the double lot. And everyone's looking and thinking, how can we see people in our churches discipled so that they rise up, full of faith, go out and make a difference? There isn't anyone here who wouldn't be interested in that answer, and certainly no church leader that isn't desperate to find a silver bullet, which of course there isn't, but a core idea that would see this rise up in a new way. You see, every church has one or two people that grow really strong and quickly. And you'll be thinking of them in your church. One or two people that they were kind of like you, and then they shot up in their faith, and they became like the spiritual heavyweights around. The trouble with that is that we recognize, because we can think of who those people are, that it's not the norm. That in our churches, most of the time, people come week after week and are not particularly any more empowered to live for Jesus than they were maybe a year ago or even 5 years ago. Please don't misunderstand me. That's the journey in the church that I lead. I want to fix that faster and quicker than all of us, maybe. We can see the problem. And maybe it's this. We have assumed that if we give people loads of information, that will be enough to disciple them. And we've packed them with information week after week. So typical church goes like this. Your preacher will preach his or her heart out on a Sunday morning. It will be very challenging. In fact, as you leave church that morning, you will shake your vicar, minister, preacher's hand, and you'll say, that was a very challenging sermon, vicar. He or she will smile with suitable pride that they've done their job well for another week. It's a little game we play. Thank you very much. Thank you. Glad you. Thank you. And that happens up and down the country every Sunday at about 12:15, 12:30. That's what's going on all over the land. You will then go into your typical week, not the preacher necessarily, although it's true just as much for him or her. We go into the typical week and do absolutely nothing about what we heard in the sermon. In fact, we go into the normal week and we live the same way that we lived last week. And actually, because that's the same way that we lived the week before. And there isn't much expectation that the week following will be any different. So we live the same way, despite what we said to the vicar at the door. And what's more remarkable still is typical church has told you that the challenge for that particular Sunday is so important and everyone must do it. But when you come back a week later, no one will ask you how you got on. No one will make you feel awkward or embarrassed or somehow out of sorts because you hadn't done the challenge from the previous week. In fact, typical church will welcome you with open arms, seemingly so delighted that you've come for another Sunday rather than go to the beach, wash the car, or read the papers or anything else. And that has been happening for decades in our churches. Anyone agree with that? And we've thought that if we give people information, that somehow it will disciple them in a way that it just doesn't. Jesus modeled a very different way. He modeled learning by imitation. Come, follow me. Be close to me. Watch what I do. Help me in what I do. Have a go at what I'm doing. I'll help you. All of the time, he lived the whole of his life on view to the 12 people he was raising up to go on and live the mission into the future. To be covered in the dust of your rabbi was a beautiful phrase because it pictured the disciple so close to his master that as they walked along, the dust would fill his feet and even fill his face, always together, living, learning, imitating, growing. Come, follow me. And we know that in other walks of life, don't we? If you learn to be a plumber, then you go to the classroom and you have information. Really important. It's not that we don't need any information, but unless you're shown how to behave, how to whatever plumbers do, how to do plumbing like a plumber, how to tool like a plumber, unless you're apprenticed, you're never going to learn and grow. I have one wife and 4 kids. And in case you're interested, I got them in that order. And 2 girls and 2 boys. Girls are with me here, my wife Kerry, and I'm really thrilled about that. The boys are kind of get lost. We're going to do our own thing, Dad. And they're also here around somewhere in one of the other venues. Last year, I had the privilege of teaching my daughter Rachel to drive. Now, I want you to imagine what it would have been like if we worked on an information-only basis. So the driving lesson was only ever in our front room. Mirror, signal, position, speed, gear. You got it right? Let's go again. Mirror, signal, position, speed, gear. Mirror, signal, right. Here are the keys. Have a go. Would she ever get in the car and start? Would she? No. She would never, ever have enough confidence to get in the car and turn the engine and have a go. I've got 2 boys for whom confidence is at a different level. Here, boys, now they would have a go. But that would end in disaster as well. And that's what happens in our churches. We give people information, but most of the time, none of us have enough confidence to have a go. So we don't. Information is not enough. A few of us, for whom confidence might not be a problem, do have a go and can so easily crash and burn because we've never been properly apprenticed. We need information. But more, much more, we need imitation. Imitation. So are we loading people with information? You see, Jesus spent half his ministry with his disciples. If preaching alone to the masses could have done the deal, there would have been thousands of people following Jesus at the end. Wouldn't there? He's a pretty good preacher, wouldn't you say? He's the man on the money. But yet, he modeled this information, of course, but unless there's imitation, we're never going to grow very much. You see, Jesus didn't just, in the end, teach them to pray. It's interesting, isn't it? We pick up on it, don't we, whilst our preachers? Look, the disciples asked Jesus to teach them to pray, so he did. And then we concentrate on the lesson about prayer. The real question is, why did the disciples ask that? Because they'd watched him every single day. And in fact, the information that Jesus was giving those disciples was not like the starting point. It was the end of the teaching journey. The information was making sense of what they were learning by watching and imitating him. You see, he didn't just say to them, look, you need to go out and you need to have meals with tax collectors and prostitutes. He said, look, come, follow me. Let's do this together. You see, the people in my church don't need more information on how to pray. And they don't actually need any more information on how to reach their neighbor or how to disciple a friend. You see, they've heard sermons on those things for years. I mean, many of us here, I guess, have been in churches for yonks. Yeah, feels like it, yeah. And we've heard all the sermons. Information is not enough. Will never be enough. And if discipleship means imitation rather than lots of information, then it means that I've got to allow people access to my life if I want to disciple them. They need access to my home, access to my family, access to my social space, access to me in the good times and in the bad times. They need access to my world. That's what Jesus modeled. Come, follow me. Share my world with me.